I'm News 13's Jerry Brown. Good afternoon. We interrupt our regular programming for a major announcement from federal authorities along with the Bay County Sheriff's Office announcing updated information of a major investigation in the region. Now, this comes just a few hours after officials were arrested in Lynn Haven today and also in Jacksonville. Lynn Haven Mayor Margo Anderson, as we understand, arrested in Jacksonville. City Attorney Adam Albritton also arrested this morning. We have been reporting for months now on the Lynn Haven corruption case. These are the latest arrests, and we assume it's connected with that case. In the past, we've told you the former Lynn Haven Community Services Director David Horton that he had pleaded guilty in the case. Horton and 4 other individuals accused of defrauding the city, FEMA, and taxpayers during the cleanup following Hurricane Michael. Former City Manager Mike White, 46, Erosion Control Specialist owner David White, 39, ECS employee Shannon Rodriguez, 37, and Joshua Daniel Anderson, owner of Greenleaf Lawn Care. All of those people pleading guilty to federal charges in this case. Prosecutors saying those suspects using false invoices to bilk the city and FEMA out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, we're talking now about these 2 people, Mayor Margo Anderson, arrested earlier today in Jacksonville, and City Attorney Adam Albritton. We are just moments away from a live announcement from federal authorities along with Bay County Sheriff's Office concerning those arrests today. We're going to be taking you there live in just a few moments for that information. Also at 4:30 this afternoon, Lynn Haven's city officials holding an emergency meeting, obviously about these latest developments. So we will be there for that and keep you updated on that information. We're going to join this live announcement right now from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Panama City.
First of all, again, thank you for being here. Secondly, the format for today will be that we will have some prepared comments, and we will then take some questions following those prepared comments by the people that we have here to talk to you today. And then following that, before you leave, I will have a package for you that contains a press release as well as a copy of the media advisory that you received. There is an indictment that's been unsealed that you, of course, could get access to yourself online if you'd like. That is quite lengthy, so I don't have hard copies for you, but I can provide you with that via email this afternoon at a later time as well. So if anyone here has mobile phones, anything else, please go ahead and silence those. And I would just like to also say that our speakers will be removing their masks when they make their remarks. Otherwise, they will be wearing them. And during the question and answer period, if you need to remove your face covering in order to ask a question, that would be fine too. But for the most part, we're going to go ahead and keep those on unless we're actually speaking. So with that, I'll go ahead and bring our folks in for you.
Okay, again, we're just moments away from a live announcement from federal authorities along with Bay County authorities concerning the arrests of present Lynn Haven officials Margo Anderson and City Attorney Adam Albritton. This is
ready?
U.S. Attorney at Lawrence KEEFE.
Very good. Good afternoon. I want to thank each of you for being here this afternoon for this very important announcement. Sadly, the bottom line message that we have for the people in this community today is that we are back. And I anticipate that we are going to continue to be coming back into this community. We were last here with you in November to report on the status of our work in the fight against public corruption in this community. I said then that this investigation into public corruption would continue. It has continued. It will continue, and it will continue to grow. I said back in November that we would return and report on our progress. We have made progress. We are here today to report on some of that progress. I predict that we will be back again with more reports on more progress. We are not finished with our work here. We announced this past November the indictment of 5 defendants. That indictment charged the former Lynn Haven City Manager, the Lynn Haven Community Service Director, and others. As alleged in that indictment, this investigation began focused on the corrupt abuse of office for personal enrichment through a scheme to conspire and defraud the city of Lynn Haven for approximately $5 million taxpayer dollars. all of those defendants have pled guilty. And all of those defendants are now cooperating with us in this ongoing and growing investigation. Today, we have indicted and arrested Lynn Haven Mayor Margot Deal Anderson and Lynn Haven City Attorney Joseph Adam Albritton on similar corruption and fraud charges. The common thread in today's indictment and the November indictment is simply this: an egregious abuse of power and position by people in public service who betrayed their sacred duties and corrupted the public's trust. Today, I am joined by Federal Bureau of Investigation Special Agent in Charge Rachel Rojas and Bay County Sheriff Tommy Ford. In a moment, they will share with you their perspectives on today's indictment. I'm also joined by Assistant United States Attorney Stephen Kunz. He is a senior prosecutor, and he serves within our Public Trust Unit. Mr. Kunz is the primary prosecutor in this ongoing investigation. In a few moments, Mr. Kunz will describe the corrupt conduct that is alleged in the indictment. After Special Agent in Charge Rojas, Sheriff Ford, and Assistant United States Attorney Kunz complete the remarks, we will respond to some questions to the limited extent that we can, because this investigation is ongoing and continuing. But before we address the particulars that are alleged in today's indictment, I want to share some perspectives about the ongoing work of our Public Trust Unit. Every successful public corruption prosecution sends a powerful message to corrupt government officials and to officials who are being tempted by opportunities for corruption. And that message is, we will come for you. But as importantly, these corruption prosecutions also send a message to every hardworking and law-abiding citizen that the integrity of those that actually run our government is essential to the continuation of our democracy. And your federal law enforcement agencies, with the partnership of local law enforcers like Sheriff Ford, are out there serving you, bringing to justice those who corrupt our government and who violate the public's trust. Our Public Trust Unit is able to bring these complicated and sensitive cases because of the significant resources that we are devoting to corruption investigations and prosecutions. We are proud to partner with the greatest law enforcement agencies in the world, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and in this case, Sheriff Tommy Ford in the Bay County Sheriff's Office. It is absolutely amazing to observe the commitment that the FBI brings to these cases, to follow the money, to decipher complicated paper trails, to find key witnesses, and to use the most sophisticated law enforcement tools in the world to build and bring these important cases. We will use every aggressive legal tool at our disposal, such as wiretaps, surveillance, confidential informants, cooperators, undercover agents, and stings. We will also rely, as we have done here, on the cooperation of elected and other government officials whose informed knowledge can help us investigate and prosecute corrupt government officials. In closing my remarks today, it is absolutely critical that I make absolutely clear to the people in this community this important truth. The vast majority of those who are in public service, the women and men who serve in all levels of our government, are truly honest and dedicated public servants. They work loyally to provide the trusted service that our citizens expect and deserve. But, as I have said before, that very small group that serves for their own illegal benefit and profit, and those who illegally seek to influence them, will be the continued targets of our work. The greatest cost of public corruption is the potential widespread loss of the public's trust in their own government. Corruption is a dangerous virus that threatens to infect public service and the public's trust in it. We're committed to stopping the spread of this virus of corruption in this community. Every citizen has a meaningful role to play in this fight against corruption. If you see or if you know something, say something. Please call or email our office's hotline to report public corruption so everyone can play their part. Mr. Coons?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. KEEFE. Mr. KEEFE has covered the background with respect to last November, where we were with respect to the initial indictment. And as all you probably are aware, this was a result of emergency decision-making powers that occurred in the city of Lynn Haven. And for approximately a 2.5 week period of time, emergency powers were designated to Mayor Anderson and then to former city manager Michael White to ignore bid procedures, to ignore all the normal things so the immediate safety of the citizens can be achieved and expenditures and contracts could be pursued to keep the city running at that point in time. And as Mr. KEEFE indicated, 5 individuals were charged, and all 5 have pled guilty with respect to those charges. That brings us to today's indictment, which charges that Mayor Anderson and City Attorney Albritton were not only aware of the agreement and the subsequent fraudulent activity, but they actively participated in it themselves. The indictment charges that in the weeks following Hurricane Michael, Mayor Anderson requested that ECS come to her residence and the residence of her mother and her neighbor and remove hurricane debris and assist in some other repairs. And those services were valued at approximately $48,000. Similarly, City Attorney Albritton, the indictment charges, directed ECS to remove debris and can also conduct repairs both to his home and the home of his girlfriend. And those activities, ECS spent approximately $25,000. Now, in all the invoices that ECS submitted to FEMA for reimbursement for the city of Lynn Haven, who had paid money, it was falsely noted that the work by ECS was done at public locations, which means taxpayers paid for the improvements and the repairs done and debris removal at the private homes of Mayor Anderson and City Attorney Albritton. As the indictment also charges that as part of the ECS invoice activity, City Attorney Albritton submitted a claim to his insurance company after he obtained a false invoice from ECS that indicated that he had falsely paid in full $9,600 for repairs from ECS. He submitted that to the St. John's Insurance Company, and he received payment, falsely stating that he'd paid for that out of his pocket. In reality, the citizens of Lynn Haven paid for that. The indictment also indicates clearly and charges that Mayor Anderson signed off on the payments and never questioned them until she learned of the federal and state investigation into the large amount of money paid to ECS in a relatively short period of time. The indictment also indicates that both Mayor Anderson and City Attorney Albritton received things of value from both David White and ECS, as well as other companies that are referred to in the indictment. Now, for example, the indictment alleges what's known as a trash pickup scheme. And the indictment indicates that City Attorney Albritton discussed with David White expanding the work that ECS was doing, and he actually drafted a contract to allow a trash pickup by ECS in the city of Lynn Haven. He being Mr. Albritton, drafted the contract to be retroactive to October 15th. It was signed on November 8th and would terminate 45 days from that date. In reality, ECS did no trash pickup until the earliest part of November, and in fact continued to bill the city and invoice the city for trash pickup when trash pickup was not done, or a little bit of it was done, but significant amounts of money were obtained from Lynn Haven. For example, the indictment indicates that on November 13th of 2018, a false $332,000 invoice was submitted to Lynn Haven by Mr. White, David White, and ECS. That falsely claimed trash pickup was conducted by ECS during a 14-day period back in October 18th of 2018. Well, no documentation was submitted at that time, and as the indictment notes, no trash pickup was made at that time, and Mr. Albritton was aware of this as well. And the indictment also indicates that Mr. Albritton, in putting together this trash pickup contract for ECS, solicited and demanded money from the monies that Lynn Haven would pay to ECS. And the indictment alleges that Mr. Albritton received from ECS, based on monies paid by Lynn Haven to ECS, $10,000 per week of trash pickup for a total of approximately $120,000. Another part of the scheme to defraud the citizens of Lynn Haven of their right to honest services and also to defraud the city of money is alleged what's known as the vegetative debris scheme. And that simply said is there was a lot of debris as a result of the hurricane, vegetative debris or chips that had to be disposed of. In a couple of different portions of the scheme, Mr. Albritton, as city manager, falsely claimed that he had obtained bids for someone to receive the vegetative debris at a certain price. He recommended and actually advised the city manager that Company A, as charged in the indictment, was the lowest price. In fact, he had not taken bids. His information was not correct and was fraudulent with what he told the city manager, so that Company A could receive business from the hauling companies. The other portion that the indictment indicates is following a meeting of the mayor, Mayor Anderson, with the executive owner of Company B and also Company A and the city manager and a few other individuals, it was decided that Company B would get more business. And in this particular case, vegetative debris, the hauling companies, the main hauling companies referred to as companies C and D in the indictment, were directed by Lynn Haven to dispose of the vegetative debris at Company B lot in a pit that they had there. This also, one was started on about November 1st, the other was approximately November 11th. This cost Lynn Haven approximately $2 million in fees that had to pay to Company B. And the indictment notes, importantly, that prior to this occurring, the city manager had attempted to permit a site owned by Lynn Haven, which would have cost nothing for the citizens to have the haulers dump this vegetative debris at that location. The indictment also alleges a couple other elaborate schemes in which very lucrative contracts were steered to Company B by Anderson and also Albritton. It also indicates that things of value were given to Ms. Anderson, including a motorhome valued at $106,000 that was provided that by the owner of Company B, who bought it from a third person, or paid for it, not bought it, purchased it from a third person, and it was titled in the name of Ms. Anderson's husband at no cost. That was back in February 2018. Additionally, the indictment alleges that as part of the contract steering that was occurring, Ms. Anderson was a beneficiary of numerous jet flights to Biloxi, Mississippi, and also to the Keys with the owner of Company B, where these flights were no charge to her, as well as other lodging and entertainment. Finally, the indictment also indicates that there was a adjuster that was hired by Lynn Haven at the request of Ms. Anderson on or about October 24th, and without any bids being done, and even though the emergency ended about 6 days later, there was a rush to get this contract signed, which would provide a 10% recovery of the damages to this company that Lynn Haven would have to pay. Well, as part of that agreement, the city manager, the mayor, and another city commissioner were able to use this same company to adjust and submit for insurance claims that they had and 2 of the 3 public officials, the city manager and the city commissioner, were paid no fee with respect to it. The indictment alleges that Ms. Anderson actually paid a reduced fee with respect to that. The indictment finally adds that there are no gift reports filed by Ms. Anderson or Mr. Albritton, which is required under Florida state law if you receive any gift in excess of $100. We would like to, from the U.S. Attorney's Office, we would like to thank the investigative team from the FBI and the Bay County Sheriff's Office, who've been working closely with us for the past year and a half or so, for their diligence in assembling a very important case and a complex case that's brought us to this point. We want to thank them for their hard work. At this point, I'll turn this over to the FBI Special Agent in Charge, Rachel Rojas. Mr. Rojas.
Thanks, Steve.
Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to take this opportunity to thank U.S. Attorney KEEFE and Assistant U.S. Attorney Kuntz for their support that the both of you give to the FBI in all aspects of our work, but especially our efforts to end public corruption in Florida. I also want to thank, for a moment, the men and women of FBI Jacksonville for their continuous efforts on this case. This case is a very important example of the FBI's public corruption mission. And lastly, but not least, I really would like to thank the great partnership that we are very fortunate and blessed to have with the Bay County Sheriff Office, with the Sheriff Tommy Ford, and his Bay County Sheriff Office team. Just a big thank you for their partnership, because without you, we could not do this. It is a partnership, and we want to thank everyone for that before we begin. So almost 9 months ago, I stood before you in this very spot, and I pledged that the FBI Jacksonville team was committed to rooting out public corruption and government fraud in this community. Today's announcement is proof of that commitment. You are, right now, seeing the results of the work that the FBI and Bay County Sheriff's Office have been doing, and we will continue to do, to stop the waste and protect the valuable contributions that hard-working, tax-paying members of this community make each and every day. As I've explained before, rooting out public corruption officials and piecing together these cases is incredibly complex and very tedious work. But it is so important to the health of our community and our state and our country. Government employees work on behalf of you, the citizens, and you should expect that we are here to protect your best interests and that they should be serving with integrity. But when the trust that you have placed in them is betrayed, the stability of our government is put at risk. This case is an example of what happens when public servants becomes complicit in corrupt behavior rather than standing up to it. Big or small, these actions weaken the foundation of our democracy, and at no level should this kind of behavior be tolerated or accepted. Anyone who puts personal greed above their responsibility to protect the public should be held accountable. The FBI Jacksonville team is proud to be a part of the Public Trust Unit that is led by U.S. Attorney KEEFE, and I assure you, as he has, that our work here is not over. As I have pledged to you in the past, we will continue to push forward with U.S. Attorney KEEFE, U.S. Attorney Assistant Steve Kuntz, Sheriff Tommy Ford, and his team to ensure that those who commit fraud and corruption in this community and beyond will be brought to justice. So I'd like to just thank you all for coming today, and I'd like to turn over the podium to Sheriff Tommy Ford.
Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, and Mr. KEEFE, Mr. Kuntz, and Sac Rojas, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the citizens of Bay County for your efforts to root out corruption here. It's a sad day, but very necessary that we continue this work. So I just want to thank you both for your partnership. Several months ago, we stood before you and made a pledge to the people of Bay County that we would continue this partnership with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, that together we would root out corruption and hold those responsible for taking advantage of us, the citizens of Bay County, during our most vulnerable time, the aftermath of Hurricane Michael. This fruitful partnership has produced results with the arrest of 9 individuals to date, with the addition today of 2 additional arrests. I believe our intent to aggressively locate and charge those that engage in corruption in Bay County is very clear. I remain proud of the dedication and professionalism of the senior criminal investigators and crime analysts that we've assigned to work with our team from the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. My support of this team will continue until our goals have been accomplished. I continue to be impressed at the expertise of the team assembled by U.S. Attorney Larry KEEFE and Special Agent in Charge ROJAS, and appreciate their partnership. This investigation remains very active and will continue. It's easy to focus on the bad and forget that Bay County is a great place to live and to do business. The vast majority of business owners and public servants working in county and city positions go to work every day to rebuild our community with integrity and often self-sacrifice. You may not hear as much about them because they are busy doing the right thing for the right reasons. But they are the ones who are quietly rebuilding, hiring new employees, managing new business landscape under the COVID-19 restrictions, and creating a bright future for everyone who lives here. Let's not allow the actions of these few to dampen our appreciation for this beautiful place we live, work, and raise our families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. We're available to answer questions to the extent that we can, given the fact that it's a continuing and ongoing investigation.
Mr. Keefe, the indictment spells out, I think, 4 companies, A, B, C, and D. It appears that A and B are local companies, C and D seem to be national companies. Are those companies or principals of those companies now facing possible indictment as well?
Stephen, I'm going to ask you to take that question. There are very, very particular rules that apply to the reason that we use anonymous identifiers in the indictment, but to the extent that we can. Why don't we just stay in place, if that's okay, and maybe a little social distance, and we can keep our masks off if you're comfortable with that, so we can answer your questions real time.
At this point of the criminal proceedings, we can't identify those companies further.
But are they facing future actions?
Again, we can't comment on the nature of the investigation or where we're going, or who may be facing charges.
This indictment also spells out several million-dollar deals with company owner B that are still in effect now with the city of Lynn Haven. How are those deals now, what is the status of those deals now?
That would be a question probably best directed to the city in terms of how they want to respond to or address that. We're here as law enforcers and investigators. We have an ongoing investigation, and we're not going to venture into that area.
This morning you seized a motorhome. You've described how that motorhome was involved in this process. But there again are millions of dollars in assets and cash payments and kickbacks spelled out in this indictment. What is the process for going after those assets at this point, or are you going after those assets?
Mr. Coons, Special Agent in Charge ROJAS.
Well, we're always anxious to identify assets so we can force defendants to make restitution to the victims here in the city of Lynn Haven. And that's an ongoing process that both the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office engage in. And that's all I can indicate at this point is that there is an effort, as we did in the last, with respect to the last case, where forfeiture was made of many items. We're looking to identify those items. In many cases, cash is paid, it's spent, we can't trace it, and we can't retrieve it. But in situations where we can locate assets, as in the case of the motorhome, that's what we'll do. We'll forfeit that, and then that can the monies from that forfeiture can be returned to Lynn Haven.
Yes.
Michael, News Channel 7 and Local 18 News. What are the potential penalties or sentencing that we could see for these charges?
Mr. Coons?
Sure. With respect to most of the counts, the conspiracy to commit wire fraud and honest services fraud, that's a maximum of 20 years imprisonment, a $250,000 fine, and also around 3 years supervised release. For the substantive accounts, the actual accounts of the using wire communications to assist in the wire fraud or the honest services fraud, similarly, those offenses face a maximum term of 20 years imprisonment. Additionally, there's a one count that charges theft of money more than $5,000 from federal program entity that federal program fraud. That's a 10-year maximum sentence. There's also the mayor's charge of making false statements to the FBI during the investigation, and she faces up to 5 years imprisonment with respect to that. Finally, there's a mail fraud statute with respect to the violation with respect to the insurance fraud by Mr. Albritton. The penalty of that, again, is similarly up to 20 years imprisonment.
And you mentioned that you anticipate you'll probably be back again with more reports. Is that specific to the Lynn Haven investigation or other investigations in the county?
As I mentioned several times, the investigation is not only continuing, it is growing in scope.
The defendants this morning, when they were arrested, my understanding is the Anderson was in Jacksonville, and Mr. Albritton was at a home in Lynn Haven. Is that correct?
Special Agent Rojas, Sheriff Ford.
A home in Panama City.
Panama City. Thank you.
And Mayor Anderson was at a home in Jacksonville.
The home in Jacksonville was a fairly new purchase by Mayor Anderson, worth about $475,000. Is that possible for the seizure as well?
Mr. Coons.
Well, what we have to do with respect to seizing property is we have to do two things. One, is there equity in it that the government can forfeit? Secondly, the government's required to trace the monies that were used to purchase that. If that came from criminal activities, then we can usually forfeit that. But that's really a two-step process that we have to pursue with respect to that.
What is their status right now? What are they?
Special Agent Rojas, Sheriff Ford.
Mayor Anderson is in Jacksonville at the federal courthouse, and Adam Albritton is in Tallahassee federal courthouse, and pending an appearance this afternoon in court for both.
Will both of them be offered the opportunity, as these previous 5 have been, to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for reduced sentence?
Mr. Coons.
The government's always interested in if individuals want to cooperate and assist the investigation and provide information as to other activities. We're always interested in doing that. And if in fact they provide what's known as substantial assistance to the government, we'll advise the court of that, and the court makes a determination if in fact they should get a lesser sentence or not.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been watching a live announcement from U.S. Attorney Lawrence KEEFE's office in the Northern District of Florida here in Panama City concerning the latest arrests in the Lynn Haven corruption case, and that case is continuing. Lynn Haven Mayor Margot Anderson, City Attorney Adam Albritton, both arrested today. Albritton here in Panama City, the Mayor Anderson in Jacksonville at her home there. Charges of corruption and fraud charges concerning illegal activity, alleged illegal activity after Hurricane Michael here in this area. And they are accused of receiving personal benefit of debris removal from that storm illegally, also connected with the other illegal activity that the other defendants have already pled guilty in this case. So a lot of information here that was released from this indictment and announced during this roughly 30-minute live announcement from the U.S. Attorney's Office. There is more information to be coming out of this that we'll be having later today. At 4:30 this afternoon, Lynn Haven City officials holding a special meeting concerning these latest developments in the Lynn Haven corruption case. We'll be covering it there and provide more for you here on News 13, mypanhandle.com, and all of our social media platforms. Again, Lynn Haven Mayor Margot Anderson, City Attorney Adam Albritton, both arrested today facing charges of corruption and fraud and abuse of power. The U.S. Attorney saying that our work, not finished with our work here, implying more arrests forthcoming in this case. I'm Jerry Brown, News 13. We'll be giving you more information later. We now will rejoin our regular programming.